Hey everyone, so we are back. Today is, let me look at my watch, James. Today is November 15th, and it is, we was off a whole week, man.
Yeah.
Oh, no podcast for a week, Ollie. How does that feel? Like not being in here, we did some replays.
It's been a while. I'm glad to be back in front of the camera and being able to speak to the people. You guys know how I get down.
In front of the camera. I'm glad to be back. But we just a few things real quick. We want to remind everybody that we have a few huge events going on before we get into the podcast for today.
Yes.
On what is it? November. I'm still
November 17th. We are hosting.
We're not hosting. We're planning part in this one.
Oh,
and it's not November 17th. November 18th. Let's get this right. November 18th. We'll be with Concerned Black Clergy for Clergy with a Candle.
Yes.
Where we'll be at, and we have more information about that actually on our page, and it's going out via email. Because we'll be hosting an event with them where we'll be feeding the homeless and talking about gun violence in the Pittsburgh, Atlanta community. Right. And then we turn right back around from there on November 20th.
Yes.
We turn right back around from there and we'll be at Grace Christian Center down in Atlanta.
Right.
Where we'll be hosting our gun violence town hall. So we'll have opportunity for people to be able to come out and hear families. And that is from 1 to 3 this Saturday. An event with Concerned Clergy with a Candle is from 3 to really 7 o'clock roughly, because we'll be feeding people as well. So that's super exciting for us, and I look forward to that. But that's what we have going on this week. But I'd be remiss to not get on the topic of today. We actually do have a really great topic because, one of the things that, as we know, I'm an ex-offender, and I always preach about the importance of second chances, right? People being able to have the ability to get back into society, rehabilitate themselves. So I met Jaya. We're going to put your whole name out to have everybody, run your name, trying to find you. I met Jaya maybe a week ago, literally. And you reached out to our organization. But you actually have a video on YouTube, too, kind of telling your testimony and what you've been through. So without me telling your story, because nobody can tell your story better than you, tell us about what happened, where did you come from, and just what happened, to even get you in a situation.
Okay, so I just got out of prison in August the 27th, and I did 10 years for armed robbery. I'm be honest, the first couple years when I did get to prison, I rebelled, and I really just was really mad that I even got in the situation I was in because it was for some guy. And in 2017, I finally had enough. I had a girlfriend and became gay for the stay. And
gay for the stay.
Gay for the stay. I ended up, my girlfriend almost killed me in my cell, and I PC'd myself, which is called protective custody, and I got on my knees that night and I prayed in my cell and asked God to come into my heart. And from then on, I'm going to be honest, nothing changed. Everything was still messed up. But as time went on, as I continuously was obedient to God and started slowly reading my Bible, God started transforming me one step at a time. And I got into the seminary program, and I started hanging out with new friends, and I just slowly God started opening doors for me. And I'm not saying that everything just went just great and just changed overnight, because it didn't, and it took a lot of time. But I just know that as far as a second chance, people can change. It takes time, and it depends on if you really want it, but people do change.
So one of the things that's extremely important for me, I always tell a story. I remember when I got out, and I remember that first moment I got out, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember looking at the world and was wondering how do I now fit into this new world? And I was only in there for less than a year. Good behavior got me out quick, right? And in Florida, you don't serve 100% of your time. Definitely for the crime I went to jail for. What was that experience like for you? Walking out the gate and realizing that, first off, from 10 years, and I think you told me you did day to day, right? The whole
Yes.
10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So realizing that the world is totally, when you, 10 years ago, it's probably an iPhone 2 or something out, maybe.
iPhone 3.
3 or something like that, right? When they were not even doing fingerprint where you had to type in the code still.
Yeah.
Now they have iPhones now where literally your face opens up the iPhone. Facebook is different. Twitter, I think, is probably different and new. So what was the world, Well, what was the world like? Because then too, there's also the thing that a lot of stuff do make its way into prison. We understand that. But what was your reaction when you walked out?
When I got out, everything was different. Like you said, the computers, the laptops, the phones. I didn't even know what Uber was or Instacart. I didn't know what any of that stuff was. So like everything, like literally a decade later, like it changed. It was like not normal. I'm still readapting now. It's crazy.
So one of the things I don't think that people who have never been institutional or been in the institution don't understand is when we use the word institutionalized, right? Mm-hmm. Explain to people what that means. Like, I mean, because you and I both know, like, you're programmed to do things a certain kind of way. You're programmed to wake up at a certain time of day, every day, same time. And if you want to eat, like, there's certain times. It's not just eat whenever you want to go get a hamburger. It's not. It doesn't work. Well, somewhat doesn't work like that. But explain to people, like, what it means to be institutionalized from your standpoint and how that affects you in society now.
Well, every day in prison, we had to wake up at 5 o'clock and be online for count. And if I continuously doing this habit every day, it's like I have to get up at this time. We had to be walked here. We couldn't go here. I couldn't do this. I had to ask to do this. And it was like, it was an everyday thing. And it's like a learning process. After you keep doing it so many times, it becomes like a cage that you're put in. And so, yeah, when I have gotten out, I literally, sometimes when I was with my friend, I kept asking her, well, is it okay for me to go down the street to the store? And she was like, yeah, you're grown, you're not in jail anymore. And it's like certain things in my mind that I still am trying to just, go back to normal. It's literally not easy.
Yeah. That brings me to my first question about PTSD and the issues you may or may not have had to deal with since you've been out. You mind sharing with us if you've had any?
Some of the things that's went on in there has caused trauma due to maybe like some of the riots that they would have in there, or people beating people with locks and stuff like that. That's traumatizing, seeing stuff like that. And it's a little there.
So one of the things that I'm a huge advocate of, right? And the reason why I am a huge advocate of second chances. Somebody gave me a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance, literally. Because I can't say that since I've been out. Like, I did, how old am I? So it was 13, 14 years ago since I've been institutionalized, per se, in prison. But since that time, like, I can't say that people haven't given me chances and I haven't made mistakes, right? Why is it so important for you that you get a second chance in society? And what is something like, express your heart, like, for me, I always try to tell people, like, I wanted the second chance in society. I didn't abuse my second chance. And even to the day, it's always constant in my mind that how quick that can be taken away from me, right? Why is it that Jaya deserves a second chance?
I just feel like if I've changed, and I know that. I mean, I still have ways about me that I have to work on, but I just feel like everybody deserves a second chance. Like, getting a job, sometimes it's hard. Where I want to work at, I can't because of my record. Apartments, I can't live anywhere because of my record, so I have to stay with friends. So it's ridiculous that certain areas that I can't even engage in because of my background. And I'm not going to go out and rob somebody again, and the situation of my crime is crazy, but I don't want to go all the way into it. But the point is, I just feel like everybody deserves a second chance if they're proving themselves to actually trying to do right. And
especially after serving the time.
Exactly.
And I get, once you get out, the theory is that you should be able to come out and have a clean slate. But
yes.
Unfortunately, that is not the truth, and it's not the case.
But even for speaking from this perspective, I think too that not only is it for people who are ex-offenders, and you won't understand this unless you have a record, right? That not only is the stigmatism that you deserve a second chance in society, But society, like every single time you do anything wrong, society automatically go back to what you did before. And even if it doesn't even relate, like I know people who are nonviolent offenders, meaning like white collar crime offenders, who somebody would accuse them of a violent crime, and the DA's office or the system will say, well, even though there's no evidence in the case, because of the fact that you have a record and they don't have a record, we got to side with them, right? That's not a fair system, and that's not. I mean, and for me, like that's one of the things we fight against every day, right?
Absolutely.
Because of the fact that one person's word should not mean something like your word should not mean more, and like I've known cases where people who were offenders were the victim. And you were the one who were actually, I was calling the police on you.
Right.
And because of the fact that I have a record, it now turns around to me being the victim.
Right.
And
you are always
always
the
like, and it's bad because from a justice perspective, people who are offenders sometimes are even afraid to call the police because they could be offended and they could have been the victim, but somehow, fashion, or form. In a lot of cases, we've seen where people who were the victim, who were offenders, end up becoming the perpetrator at that point. And that's not fair. Like I can speak for myself. I've had places where before people who knew about my record would try to be like, oh well, if you don't do this, I'll go and do this. And I'm like, well, go do it. Like go ahead and do it. And I think that comes from being confident in your own skin and kind of going through the process. And once you know the law and you actually know what the rules and regulations are, and I get it. So there's gonna be some people out on Facebook who are going to go off on us and say, if you don't break a crime, then you won't have to worry about any of this. And I get that, right? I don't think that any person who has gone through the system and have really changed their life come out saying, like, I don't deserve to have been punished for what I did. I'm not saying that. I don't think I get that from you. I think that we are saying that I made a mistake. And if the system has said that, I only need to serve this amount of time and then I'm going to allow you back out to be able to go back into the community, then the community has to be receptive enough to allow me to not live every day in my mistake. Because the reality is that 90% of the world should probably have been in jail because everybody has done something that has broken the law. And nobody's exempt from that. The difference is that we have a saying in jail. The only difference is that we got caught and you didn't. Right.
I was going to say that.
And even now, like, I was talking to somebody today, and I'm not going to say their name, and I hope that they don't get upset with me if they see this video, but they were saying that they applied for a job at a certain job with a certain people, and something that happened 37 years ago came up. 37 years ago, right? Why is this something that you did, write a check to somebody 37 years ago, affect you've been able to get a job 37 years from now? And after you have served your time, did whatever you're supposed to do, and not only that, you have had no problem with the law, not even a speeding ticket for 37 years, and now you can't even get a certain job because of something that you did 37 years ago. Those are things that I think that we're arguing for, saying that, hey, the system has to be fair, the system has to be just. In the system, if you're going to say that I'm going to be given another opportunity to society has to be built to allow me to have opportunity.
Well, but that requires, well, for lack of a better phrase, a law of forgiveness being put in action. Being able to, as an employer, being able to forgive and even have some sort of understanding or compassion about whatever the situation was. And it may be case by case, it may just be across the board, but it still needs to be applied, especially if you are someone who claims to be a Christian or a believer, then you need to be enacting that. But the problem is we allow our personal feelings to still become part of the equation.
And you know me personally, right? You're getting to know me personally. I love Jesus. I'm gonna say it like this. I love my brother from Nazareth. Okay, I do. I love him to death. The problem is that people who profess Jesus and we believe in forgiveness don't understand the depth of what forgiveness is. Right?
Indeed.
And what I mean by that is that we think that as long as you've offended me, I need to be able to forgive you. Right? But at the same time, we need to be able to forgive people who may not have offended us. So meaning that, when I see second chances, right, I don't think that me writing back checks is any different than this sounds really rough, and I hope you take it in context. I don't think that the chances that I was given for the charges that I was charged with should be any different than the chances that she's given for the charges she was charged with. two different types of charges. One is nonviolent, one is considered very violent, but at the same time, somebody has to give her that second chance, right?
Absolutely.
And forgiveness is something that we deal with from the church perspective, but we don't really deal with it in context, because from a church perspective, from a biblical standpoint, sin is sin. All sin is the same. So whether a person steals a pack of gum from a store, or whether a person that's cheating on their wife, or whether a person put a gun to somebody's head and stole from them, God sees that all as the same.
Absolutely.
We as a society have gotten to the place where we've said, like, okay, we have a third-degree misdemeanor, second-degree misdemeanor, first-degree misdemeanor. We got a third-degree felony, second-degree felony, first-degree felony. And I get that. Society has to have those rules, because a person who, again, I'm not going to say a person who wrote a bad check should be in prison for the same amount of time as a person who did an armed burglary. Absolutely not, right? If you send me 10 years door to door for writing a check for $400 and $500, and she robbed somebody, and she go and we get the same amount of time, then obviously that's gonna make it to the point where everybody, if you have that kind of mentality, you be like, well, it doesn't make a difference what I do. I'm gonna do 10 years anyway, so I might as well go out here and do the worst, right?
Right.
So I get why society has that, and I understand. But from the justice system, I don't see anything wrong. But from the rehabilitation, getting back into society aspect of it, we have to not be so judgmental to where we see those things as differently. I have a problem, and I didn't before being a part of the system, I didn't, right? I have a problem with people who are considered sexual offenders having to release everything about themselves every single point, right?
I agree.
What I mean by that is if right now I have Ring doorbell on my phone and neighborhood on my phone. If somebody who is registered as a sex offender moves in my neighborhood, I get a picture of them, I get the flyer that tells me where they're going to be staying at, and I get the fact of having to track people and having to follow people. But we're in 2021. You mean to tell me that you can't track a person and follow them and keep record of them without putting out all their personal information? There needs to be imagine a family member. A person who may have offended, right? That family member may still be searching for that person. They ain't got to look hard. You can go to the state's sexual database and find out exactly where that person stays, right? Those are things. It affects the way people are, can't be in certain areas of schools. And I get it. Certain places of churches, but again, if we're saying, and there's a school almost every place, even in the most rural of counties, in the most rural of cities, there's schools everywhere. And then too, we've learned that some cases, we even look at the case going on in Wisconsin with the young man who killed the 3 white people who were out there, right? There's so many different things about this story. I get it, no one should have lost their life, but there's so many different things about the law that we have to throw into perspective when we think about this case, that we can't just be so one-sided to where we say he killed them, that's it, that's the end of the discussion, because there's certain things within the law that allows and permits for that, right? And again, I say this all the time, if the law allows for it and people get away from it through the law, then it's not the person that's the issue. They're part of the issue, but the main problem is the policy, right? We have to be more policy driven, and in America, we're not really policy driven. We need to be more policy driven about making sure that people have second opportunities when they come back out of society. We need to be more policy driven when we talk about how a person's sentenced, to make sure that we're not disproportionately sentencing people. We need to put policies in place that puts handcuffs on the hands of the DA's office, because the DA's office can sometimes be radical. It's not uncommon for the DA's office to go into a courtroom and indict a person or charge a person with crimes that are egregious, have nothing to do with what they've done, just because of the fact that they can use that as a fear tactic or a scare tactic later on to say, hey, if you don't plead to this, and we'll give you a lesser charge, but if you don't want to take that lesser charge, then we're going to bang you on these charges.
That's true.
That's not fair. That's not a fair system. And it happens every single day. And it happens in every single state, in every single county. And I don't even I get it, we elect DAs in our counties, in the state of Georgia, each county has an elected DA. I don't even blame that person, because that person can't be in the hearts of, they may have a good view of life and a good view of how they want to run that system, but they're not in the hearts of the 100 people who work underneath them, right? They're not in every single courtroom. They're not looking at every single case. D.A. Brody's not looking at every single case that comes across his desk. That's why he have assistant DAs. D.A. Pat, see what I'm saying? They're not looking at every single case. That's why they have assistant DAs. But we have to make sure that if we put policy in place to handcuff them and to limit like to not to even limit them, to be able to say, hey, if you're going to be a enforcer of fair justice, you have to be fair. I think that's the argument. If you're going to be an enforcer of fair justice, you have to be fair. And I think that that's not something that is going to, and I get when people say it's a hard thing. We've had plenty of discussions with people about it's a hard thing. Mm-hmm. It's a hard thing, but it's also a policy thing. Because policy is what gives people who have bad hearts the right to do what they do. Yes. So policy is what's going to give people who have, bad hearts
to do the right thing, no matter what, because of the policy itself.
You were there last week when DA Patsy mentioned that in the office that she's in now, there were people who literally left because of the way she viewed how justice needs to be served, right? And because of the fact they didn't want to work under an African American woman, or whatever the case may be, right? But they left, right?
Right.
That's the part that I'm really torn about, right? Because I get why we have to have systems in place. I get why we have to be held accountable for the things we do that's wrong, right? Yes. But I think it has to be fair. I think it has to be just. And what we've come to see, and people don't like to talk about this, is that we've come to see when they could no longer just freely hang us or freely put us in the back of their truck and kill us, they implemented policies and systems that still put us away and still locked us up and still gave us that same mindset of being institutionalized, but now on a different way of doing it, being institutionalized, right? So like you talked about earlier, how you normally wake up at 5 a.m. now, even though you've been out for 3 months. I remember when I got out, I woke up every day at 4:30, right? No matter what time, I could go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. I still woke up at 4:30 because of the fact that I was trained to know that if I didn't wake up at 4:30, I was going to get in trouble for not being available for count. True. And I probably wasn't going to eat breakfast that day. And remember, they fed me at 4:30 in the morning for breakfast. Yeah. So if I had to wait till lunch was at 10:30 or 11:30 that day. And then if I had to wait for dinner, that was 5:30. So you know what I'm saying? Like, what average person is eating breakfast at 4:30 in the morning? Right. But if you didn't eat breakfast, your next meal wasn't coming to 10:30 or 11 o'clock, unless you had a family who supported you and you may have had some food in your bin. You know what I'm saying? But I don't, for me, those are things that we're going to push for. Those are things that we have to continue to push for. And we have to hear stories like Jaya's story, where she says, like, hey, I know I made a mistake. Hey, I served my time. But at the same time, I deserve a second chance, because ultimately, and from a Christian standpoint, she's saying, God gave me a second chance. Why is it that men can't? Right. And definitely for a nation that proposes itself to be a Christian nation, predominantly Christian nation. And I don't think, and I don't know, even I think with other faiths and religions, I think most faiths teach forgiveness, right? Muslims teach forgiveness. Buddhists teach forgiveness. Yes. Even freaking people who don't have a faith teach that you have to be forgiving of other people.
Right.
But forgiveness, I think it doesn't become real to you, or different levels of forgiveness don't become real to you until it personally impacts you.
Yes. I have a question. You had mentioned earlier about being in the seminary program. Mm-hmm. So how has that helped you? How did it help you then, and how has it helped you now?
Thank you.
The seminary program that I went through, it was really confusing at first, because I understood the Bible, but I didn't. And as I went through the program, I grew closer to God with time. And I learned the Bible with time. And I learned how to apply the Bible with time. And it really helped out, like, a whole lot. Like, I was able to stand in front of people and preach a sermon. I was able to work on my dance ministry and other things. And that school, like, developed me to actually do that. And it was awesome. Wonderful. I'm glad, like, I was able to do that. And I know it was God, because when they put the form up in the prison, I was like, I'm so going there. I was expecting to go to TC, but I didn't want to go.
Right.
And I signed up for the paper. I ended up going, and I still was able to go to TC. But long story short, it was amazing.
Wonderful.
So it helped out a lot.
So what would you like to do? You wish to pursue an interest in ministry at this time, or one way, form, or fashion?
Of course. As of right now, I'm working on music. I write Christian rap music, so that's what I'm working on right now. And I do like dance and that. Like, I just love music. Anything with Christian music, that's just me. So that's where my ministry is probably going to be at. But I I believe whatever God's will, He's going to make it happen. All the doors will open for me to do that. So that's just how I look at it.
And I will say this too, but from what we had in discussions, since you've been up, you work for Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Kudos to her. You currently work for UPS, and you had another job too. So I mean, again, I think it goes back to redemption. I mean, you're not a. For me, I get the fact that you're still transitioning, but you're not a bad story of what a second chance looks like. If that makes sense, right? Because there's people out here who now I know who can't get a job at all, right? For you to have worked for Amazon and now we're working for UPS is a blessing within itself. So kudos to you for doing that.
Yes.
So even, make sure my packages get to my house. That's all I care about.
Got you. I'll try.
UPS. But without you, I mean, UPS is terrible during the winter time, during Christmas time and delivering packages. I mean, I'm sorry. I did not say that. UPS is great.
Yes, you did.
UPS may be
out there now.
But no, thank you so much for being willing to tell your story live. And thank you so much for being willing to just kind of talk about some of the things that you've been through and some of the things that you continue to go through. And we are excited to see what the future holds. And I think, and she's even offered to tell her story to kids and other people. So I'm going to connect her with the DA and
beautiful,
and some other organizations that we're working with that are working with youth.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's important for us and for all of us, whether or not you've been to jail or not, our youth are extremely important. Because, and the last part of this is that your sentence started out when you were young. Like you were how old?
19.
19. So it's important that, but the things that got you into the sentence started before then, right? You were younger. So I mean, it's important that we deal with our youth, we talk to our youth, and that we make sure that they understand that for every reaction, for every action there's a reaction, right? And it's good and bad, good and bad, good and bad. The good choices you make will bring you good, but sometimes bring you good. And sometimes it may take a while. And I think that a big part of what our youth are missing is patience. Because they're growing up in a generation where everything is what Pastor Ramon would call microwavable, right?
Yes.
You put it in the microwave and it's easily ready for you right then and there. And they have no sense of what it means to be patient at all.
Right.
And I tell my nephew that, like, I'm sorry I'm talking about you, I ain't gonna say your name, but I tell him that like all the time, like, slow down and just think it through. Slow down and just think it through. And he has not taken that advice yet from me, but eventually, I mean, he'll realize
You'll
that
have
you
to
have
learn
slow
it.
down.
You'll have to learn it.
Yeah. So, and that's why I like spending time with older people, because you guys remind me. Sorry, you're not, younger people.
I understand.
You guys remind me of that. We have to take our time to slow down because you didn't grow up in it. Like, I remember ending on this. Like, my grandmother used to always tell a story about how happy she was when we got a dryer. Because when I grew up, we used to have a washing machine, and it'll go from the washing machine to the clothesline, right?
Yeah.
And we would have these pins, and we used to hate it. And when we got that the dryer, for me, I was so appreciative of it because I remember what it was like to hang clothes up on the clothesline. My nephew and niece could not imagine that world.
Yeah.
And you think back to my grandmother's generation where they didn't have TVs beginning off in our generation, but then they had a gray TV, black and white TV. Then now we got color screen TVs. Now you got TVs you could throw on glasses and feel like you're in the TV with what's going on, like 3D TVs. So, I mean, and these kids live in a different generation than we do. They see things quicker than us, and they're used to getting it on the fly. You can now order food and have it here within 20 to 30 minutes. Before, we had to go to the store and figure out how we're going to cook it.
Yeah.
So,
and you didn't have, see, for me, microwaves were just coming out. When I was much younger. So, but even today, I still prefer using the stovetop in the oven, just because.
Man, give me a microwave.
Well, I'm thinking, radiation.
Give me that microwave. I'll leave. What you taking, the microwave, or you put it in the oven?
I'm with James. I think
it depends. If it's pizza, I throw it in the oven. If it's like some food I had from the hibachi restaurant last night from Miyako's. Man, give me the microwave. Let's go. Let's go. There's some yum sauce and we're good to go. Thank you guys for tuning in today. We are so appreciative, and I just want to remind everybody in the last note that everybody deserves a second chance. I don't care whether they've been through the system or whether they have not been through the system.
Absolutely.
Even if you have people in your life who you feel like have burnt you or you feel like have messed you over, whatever the case may be, right? One of the things that I have learned in 2021 and 2020 is life is too short, and the people that you find yourself beefing with now or arguing with now, once they're dead and gone, you wish you could have every one of those arguments back. So don't waste time. Don't live life bitter. And love, love in the places where people don't expect you to love, and watch how God can kind of change your life. And that's my advice to everybody today. Love even when they don't expect your love. Until next time, we will be back tomorrow. But until next time, thank you, Jaya, for coming on and telling your story.
Yeah.
Thank you so very
And
much.
for everybody out there who may be in the system or may be coming out of the system, remember that when God opens the door for you, no man can shut it. And when God shuts the door, no man can open it. So you
That's
just
right.
walk in every door that God has for you and be great, because you are great.